From a king to an animal. The rise and fall of King Nebuchadnezzar. This tragic story begins with a mysterious dream. Through Genesis through Revelation, you'll encounter a number of kings in the Bible. One of the most potent kings mentioned in the Old Testament is King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. He lived a dramatic, exciting life from his fiery furnace and giant golden idol. In ancient times, Nebuchadnezzar was the most powerful monarch. Daniel chapter 2 verses 37 and 38. You, O king, are the king of earthly kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. And wherever the sons of men dwell, and the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, he has given them into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You, king of Babylon, are the head of gold. During that time, he united the Babylonian Empire, the largest kingdom in the world. It extended from the Red Sea on the southern border, west to the Mediterranean Sea, north to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and east into Arabia. Using an atlas or world map, you can see the countries that would have been part of Nebuchadnezzar's empire today: Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, and parts of Saudi Arabia. The capital city of Babylon, surrounded by great walls and deep canals, was considered unassailable, secure, unconquerable. Nebuchadnezzar constructed a magnificent hanging garden for his wife, as well as a temple of Marduk, which contained golden images of the pagan gods Bel and Ishtar. Babylon was a city of gold because Nebuchadnezzar used so much gold in his building project. Besides being an accomplished builder and military leader, King Nebuchadnezzar was also a skilled builder. To expand his empire, he fought neighboring nations. Babylon was rebuilt into one of the most famous cities of its time under his leadership. In honor of pagan gods, he built hundreds of temples and altars. However, Nebuchadnezzar had one trait that was going to threaten all his greatness. This story begins with a dream. King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that his own wise men could not interpret, so he sent for Daniel and told him the dream. Nebuchadnezzar had seen a tree, high, beautiful, and fruitful. The visions that passed through my mind as I lay on my bed were these. I was looking, and behold, there was a tree in the middle of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew large and became strong, and its height reached to heaven, and it was visible to the end of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, and its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the sky nested in its branches, and all living creatures fed themselves from it. And behold, I saw in the visions of my mind as I lay on my bed, an angelic watcher, a holy one, descended from heaven. He shouted aloud and said this: Cut down the tree and cut off its branches. Shake off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the living creatures run from under it, and the birds fly from its branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump with its roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze, in the new grass of the field. And let him be wet with the dew of heaven, and let him feed with the animals in the grass of the earth. Let his mind and nature be changed from a man's, and let an animal's mind and nature be given to him, and let 7 periods of time pass over him. This sentence is by the decree of the angelic watchers, and the decision is a command of the holy ones, so that the living may know without any doubt that the Most High God rules over the kingdom of mankind, and he bestows it on whomever he desires, and sets over it the humblest and lowliest of men. This is the dream which I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now you, Belteshazzar, explain its meaning, since none of the wise men of my kingdom are able to reveal its interpretation to me. But you are able, for a spirit of the holy gods is in you. Daniel chapter 4 verses 10 to 18. Daniel explained to the king that the tree represented him and his worldwide empire. However, the stump symbolized the restoration of Nebuchadnezzar, not his destruction. Daniel also counseled the king to change his ways. However, after 12 months of impenitence on the king's part, the vision came to pass. All this happened to Nebuchadnezzar the king. 12 months later, he was walking on the upper level of the royal palace of Babylon. The king said thoughtfully, "Is not this the great Babylon which I myself have built as a royal residence and seat of government by the might of my power, and for the honor and glory of my majesty?" While the words were still in the king's mouth, a voice came, as if falling from heaven, saying, "O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is declared, the kingdom has been removed from you, and you will be driven away from mankind, and your dwelling place will be with the animals of the field. You will be given grass to eat like the cattle, and 7 periods of time will pass over you, until you know, without any doubt, that the Most High God rules over the kingdom of mankind, and he bestows it on whomever he desires." Immediately, the word concerning Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from mankind, and began eating grass like cattle, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until his hair had grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails were like birds' claws. But at the end of the days, that is, at the 7 periods of time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven, and my understanding and reason returned to me, and I blessed the Most High God, and I praised and honored and glorified him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are regarded as nothing. But he does according to his will in the host of heaven, and among the inhabitants of the earth. And no one can hold back his hand, or say to him, "What have you done?" Now at the same time my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my majesty and splendor were returned to me. And my counselors and my nobles began seeking me out. So I was reestablished in my kingdom, and still more greatness than before was added to me. Daniel chapter 4 verses 28 to 36. We have here Nebuchadnezzar's recovery, and his return to his right mind at the end. King Nebuchadnezzar established himself to be one of the most arrogant leaders in history, so self-centered and prideful that God dealt with him most unusually. A poem by Deborah Ann Belka says, "Lord, take away the pride in the things I say and do. Let me take no pleasure in just my point of view. Teach me to be humble instead of being right, so I can stand worthy, pleasing in your sight. Help me to be meek, less of myself aware. Let not my ego cause other people to despair. Let me be grateful, modest in my needs. May I not be haughty in my acts and deeds." God removed him from his position and drove him into the wilderness to live like an animal. Fortunately, God's discipline worked. Once the king returned to the palace, he became a different man. He no longer laid claim to sovereignty or wisdom. He perceived his greatness as God-given. He sought to honor God rather than himself as the source of every good thing. Notice how Nebuchadnezzar developed a teachable spirit. Number 1. Grateful words. The king, with appreciation and blessing, expressed God's grace and mercy. Number 2. Hungry mind. There was a passion and hunger for personal growth in the king. Number 3. Big picture perspective. The king saw things from a new, larger viewpoint. Number 4. Dissatisfaction with the present. There was no satisfaction in the status quo or mediocrity for the king. Number 5. Humble heart. In regards to his own power and importance, the king expressed humility. Number 6. Magnetic spirit. Nobles and counselors began to return to the king once more. How about you? Are you a teachable leader? Do you want to dictate the people or circumstances from whom you will learn? Or will you learn from anyone? Consider a few steps to improve your teachability. Number 1. Don't believe your own press. Today's mistakes are the greatest enemies of tomorrow's success. Don't get distracted by your achievements. Number 2. Observe how you react to mistakes. Are you willing to admit them when you make mistakes? Do you apologize or get defensive? Get honest about your needs. Many proverbs warn that the sin of pride is a dangerous offense. Proverbs chapter 16 verses 18 and 19. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. It is better to be humble in spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud, haughty, arrogant. Pride leads to humiliation, as the passage clearly explains. It is better to be humble and poor than proud and rich. The opposite of pride, humility, leads to honor. Pride sets us down an ill-fated path. To choose pride is to set oneself up for a fall. The pedestal we make for ourselves proves a shaky footing. Respect, reverence, and submission to the Lord are all aspects of fearing the Lord. Because the Lord is infinitely wiser than we are, we acknowledge our desperate need for Him. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 7. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord with reverent awe and obedience, and turn entirely away from evil. Whenever we see the terms such as destruction, fall, disaster, ruin, and downfall in these passages, can be understood as a penalty meted out to the proud to humble them and correct their waywardness. Unchecked pride leads to destruction. The purpose of the Bible's warnings is to put the proud sinner back on a path that leads to honor and life. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 2. When pride comes, then comes disgrace. And again, pride ends in humiliation, while humility brings honor. Proverbs chapter 29 verse 23. In the Garden of Eden, pride went before a fall in a dramatic and consequential manner. Adam and Eve's fall stands behind every proud fall of humankind since. Choosing their own path, Adam and Eve disobeyed God. This resulted in a catastrophic fall. The proud person pursues their own way, but the humble one obeys God's word. Humbly following the Lord's commands makes us sure-footed, so that we won't slip or stagger. The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in Him. Psalm chapter 37 verse 23. Psalm chapter 18 verse 36. You enlarge the path beneath me, and make my steps secure, so that my feet will not slip. Humility and fear of the Lord establish us securely on God's path, where our feet won't stumble, nor will we fall. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 26. For the Lord will be your confidence, firm and strong, and will keep your foot from being caught in a trap. Psalm chapter 17 verse 5. My steps have held closely to your paths. My feet have not staggered.